It's Accountech Bytes, your concise chronicle of accounting tech chatter with me, Tom Herbert. Thanks for tuning in, and if you find this useful, please remember to like, subscribe, or follow, depending on your channel of choice. Let's get started, shall we? Let's start, as we mean to go on, at the pub. And with artificial intelligence potentially sweeping away a lot of that number crunching and manual work done at the bottom of the accounting pyramid, one firm is planning to do things a little bit differently and is looking to place trainee accountants on secondment at hospitality outlets in order to improve their people skills. So Paul Galliner, CEO of Azets, which has 64 offices across the UK and employs more than 4,000 people, is looking to work with hotel, pub and restaurant chains to offer secondments to trainee accountants. He tells The Times that with AI changing the nature of his profession, accountants will need to provide more strategic advice face-to-face and therefore need to improve those soft skills. Accountants can't be in front of their computer or locked up in a room. They now need to be front of house. Interesting stat from the article, according to jobs website Indeed, British accountancy firms posted 44% fewer graduate job adverts in 2025 compared with 2023. As someone who's done both accountancy and hospitality work, I can see where the Venn diagram overlaps, but I also think there's a fundamental difference in the way that some of that work is delivered. Next up, and ChatGPT parent company OpenAI has made its move into accounting by taking a stake in Thrive Holdings. So I mentioned Thrive on the show a couple of months back. They're the firm, if you remember, who have been buying traditional accounting firms over in America, rolling them up and automating some of that back office stuff with artificial intelligence. I guess the deal with OpenAI is part of that. According to Yahoo, it's a non-monetary deal, so OpenAI will provide a dedicated research team and resources in return for an ownership interest. If you'll allow me to disappear down a rabbit hole for a second, Thrive Holdings is a vehicle created by Josh Kushner's Thrive Capital. Have you heard of Josh Kushner? Well, he's the younger brother of Jared Kushner. Well, he's Donald Trump's son-in-law. It's quite the tangled web. Let's head over to Sweden now, where we don't go enough on Accountech Bytes. And Jens Nylander reports that Swedish tech darling Lovable is in trouble with the tax authorities. So as the tech curious among you will know, Lovable is kind of like ChatGPT for coding, where you stick in a prompt and it builds you a website or an app. Well, the Swedish startup may have grown to $200 million in annual recurring revenue and a valuation of nearly $2 billion, but it turns out it hasn't been applying any VAT on their services and could be forced to pay back significant amounts. Yikes. So as many of you will know, the UK Finance Minister delivered the government's annual fiscal event last week, but the Chancellor was left red-faced when the country's Office for Budget Responsibility, who's responsible for checking her figures, released a budget disclosure an hour before she stood up to give her speech. Well, the OBR chief has since resigned, and a report into the fiasco blames predictable URLs and a misconfigured WordPress plugin. So from early in the morning, enterprising journalists and those looking to beat the market were on the OBR website trying to guess the address or URL that would be used for the budget report. And when it was uploaded by a third-party web developer at some point between 11:30 and 11:35 on budget day, that URL was successfully accessed. Apparently a WordPress plugin should have been enacted to block any external attempts to read it, but it wasn't configured right. And 43 requests for that URL were received from 32 different IP addresses. 7 years after aerospace manufacturer Airbus attempted to move from Microsoft to Google Workspace, large pockets of the company's 150,000 employees are still continuing to use Microsoft in parallel. As the report on the register says, finance is the obvious example. It still relies on Microsoft Excel because Google Sheets can't handle the necessary file sizes. In some cases, spreadsheets involve more than 20 million cells. That's some spreadsheet. This from Open Banking Expo, and regulated open banking has gone live in New Zealand as part of a phased rollout. I must confess, I thought it was already live in New Zealand, but you learn something new every day. And speaking of New Zealand, Kiwi cloud pushers Xero are bringing their flagship event XeroCon back to London in 2026, 8th and 9th of July at Olympia, and tickets are now on sale. Now, regular readers of Accounting Web will know that we have regularly covered the extraordinary acquisition of Autonomy by Hewlett Packard, the subsequent write-downs, the fallout from that, the civil and criminal trials of some of the players involved, including Autonomy founder Mike Lynch, who sadly died when his yacht sank off the coast of Italy last year. Well, Times journalist Katie Prescott has written a book about Mike Lynch's rise to tech stardom, his trials and tribulations, and the complex legacy he leaves behind. And I spoke to Katie about the book, The Curious Case of Mike Lynch. Thank you to Katie for her time. Now, I'm sure I don't need to remind you that on the 11th and 12th of March 2026, the entire UK accounting world will descend on the NEC in Birmingham for the Finance, Accounting and Bookkeeping Show, or FAB. I'll certainly be there, and rather foolishly, I've committed to delivering a session on the history of accounting technology in 20 minutes. Have I bitten off more than I can chew? Well, come and find out. 1:20 p.m. on the Practice Accelerator stage. You can get your tickets at fab.uk. After last week's soft landing announcement for making tax digital in the budget, it's a slightly stripped back MTD corner this week. Here's a piece on free agents' new MTD tools. So it's rolling out an MTD for income tax submission summary report page on its practice dashboard, which provides a single centralized view for firms to see their MTD for income tax client submission statuses and upcoming obligations. And they've also added new practice level controls for approvals, submission, and client visibility. And don't forget our MTD Accountability Club, where Jake Smith, Chris Downing, Stephen Worrell, and Karen Kennedy will be busting those MTD myths for both your team and your clients. That's at 2 p.m. on the 8th of December. You can find a link to register, along with everything else mentioned in this video, in the description. Let's get on to some new stuff now. An accounting software stalwart, TaxCalc, has announced that it's taking to the cloud with a browser-based version of its tax and accounts production software, all while keeping its long-standing desktop application running. No timelines yet for when that goes live, but what has been launched is a two-way integration with practice management tool Engager. Back in May, TaxCalc acquired Engager and has been working on this integration, the first part of which has gone live last week. The two parties have big plans for a deeper integration that will allow information to flow around the practice and into those compliance tools. Now, I mentioned Xero earlier. They've released a couple of enhancements to their reporting. So you can now show formula rows as a percentage. They've tweaked their default code mapping, and a new report template banner flags unmapped accounts instantly. Now, for practices handling specialized accounts such as those in agriculture, they've also released a feature designed to streamline that data entry, which they've helpfully called Keep Excel Formatting When You Paste. And finally, you can add any custom report you've created for a client directly into an advisor report pack. Another release for anti-money laundering tool Zama, and they have rolled out the first phase of their user permissions and enterprise single sign-on support. So single sign-on allows employees at businesses to sign into one application from multiple devices. And finally, AI bookkeeping tool Briefcase has released recent uploads, which shows you who, how, and when a document was uploaded, and also shows exactly where the document was sent in Briefcase. Right, that's your lot for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd be kind enough to drop a like or a comment into the mix, I'd be very grateful. And depending on your platform, please remember to subscribe or follow. You can also sign up for my Thursday accounting technology email by popping your address in the box, hitting the yellow button, and it'll be with you every Thursday morning. Thanks again for watching. I'll be back next week with another video. Bye for now.